Thank you, Rachel, and welcome everybody to the ITSA webinar, How Smart Mobility Data Can Set Your Infrastructure Grant Application Apart. I'd like to introduce my fellow speakers. We have George Tagg, who's the Senior Advisor at Congaree River Group, JP Batista, Partnership BDM at Geotab, and myself, Carl Novelli, Assistant Vice President of Public Sector Sales here at Wejo. So I'd like to run through the agenda quickly. So we're going to do a quick session on about Wejo, presented by myself, about Geotab, presented by JP, and then the reason everybody's here, the section on grants, presented by George Tagg, and then on to myself and JP, who'll be presenting how smart mobility data can support your applications. So without further ado, a quick section on about Wejo. Wejo is the largest provider of passenger connected vehicle data globally, with over 13 million vehicles providing information every 1 to 3 seconds. We achieve this by working directly with vehicle manufacturers to provide their data out the door to end users like departments of transport, MPOs, cities, and engineering firms, to name but a few. We do this by essentially getting data directly from vehicle head units without any third-party add-ons, no aftermarket devices whatsoever. It is simply the vehicle providing information and the number of sensors contained within, up through the manufacturer cloud, fully consented data, fully anonymized and standardized, and we provide that out the door that support numerous use cases. Over to yourself, JP.
Perfect. Thank you, Carl. I appreciate that. Yeah, thanks, folks, for your time today. Really excited to talk through the combination of Wejo and Geotab ITS data. Just to give you some context behind Geotab, Geotab Inc. was founded in 2000 here in North America. We've grown to over 3,000 plus employees. And really, I think what's important here is how we got to the point of being able to leverage our rich data lake of over 50 billion raw data records per day from over 3 million connected commercial vehicles, 25 million trips per day, to really understand that it goes back to our telematics side of the business, where we deploy telematics across all sorts of fleet vehicles, commercially registered vehicles, or commercial companies that need telematics to support various needs within their fleet. And so that ranges our sample from heavy duty trucks all the way down to passenger vehicles, and has allowed Geotab ITS to provide the largest sample of aggregated commercial and freight vehicle data in North America. So we leverage a lot of the data that we consume from these, our proprietary telematics device to surface an aggregated view of that data. Like Carl said, it is anonymized as well, and we make sure that we run our data through our privacy pipelines to ensure that. Now, some of the data that comes along with the context of what we support is really powerful when you're analyzing commercial vehicles. One of those is the commercial industry. This has helped us support our clients in any sort of economic development analysis, understanding movements of vehicles broken down by industry, as well as classifying vehicles. We know exactly the type of device or vehicle that our device lives in, therefore associating each vehicle with their vehicle class, a trip vocation, which is a back-end algorithm that essentially analyzes these vehicles for about 3 to 6 months to understand what they're doing. That's really important when it comes to commercial vehicles, whether they're door-to-door, hub and spoke, long haul. They all tell a different story, especially when you're running an analysis. And then some other additional points of context, like true origin and destination and trip chaining, helping your freight really get to its true destination. Most times what we see from the initial trip in a freight study, that may not necessarily take you to your destination. It's actually taking you to a lunch break, to hours of service regulated stop, or maybe a bathroom break. So allowing our users to define that trip chaining really helps you get a further understanding of what the true origin and destination is, as well as some additional context into the routes and stops that we're able to surface. And then the last thing here that I want to highlight is the data sets that we provide in our partnership with Wejo and support. And that's our origin destination tool, which is able to surface all that context and additional data into an OD tool. Our road speed and travel metrics to identify congestion and how commercial vehicles are moving through the OSM road network. And then our intersections module, which is analyzing the efficiency of a subset of intersections and how well these commercial vehicles move, broken down by different vehicle classifications. And the last one is the intersection traffic module, which is analyzing the particular efficiencies of those intersections by themselves, analyzing the queue length or the dwell at these intersections. And so I just really wanted to make sure that everybody was aware this is where the commercial vehicle data set that we leverage comes from. And with that, I'll pass it over to George.
Great. Thank you, JP. I'm George Tagg with the Congaree River Group, and I want to talk to you today about the grants within the Infrastructure Act that hit upon connected vehicle data. This is just an example, just a non-exhaustive list. Frankly, anything that touches upon infrastructure improvements could benefit and would benefit from connected vehicle data from both a commercial standpoint and a passenger private vehicle standpoint. But I want to talk about some ones in particular. And here on the screen here, you have the overview of the entire act on the top left, and really under each of these, and we could potentially share this deck with you if you'd like at the end. But this explains in more detail how connected vehicles, CVD for short, can help municipalities win these competitive. As you know, almost 50% of the Infrastructure Act is comprised of competitive grants, and then others are comprised of formula grants. In both instances, connected vehicle data can help municipalities, states, cities, counties, MPOs, and even research nonprofits to implement these grant programs, because there's a considerable interest on return on investment to the taxpayer. The Department of Transportation is very interested in this. The U.S. taxpayer base is, and the administration certainly is, wants to show actually return on investment for this massive act that was passed just last year. So I want to start and just provide a quick overview of the grants we're going to be talking about here. But it's easy and much better to talk about it in stages. So, and to make it easy, we've created 3 stages. They seem self-explanatory, but as you go through these grants, really identifying at what stage these grants are in is super crucial. And in stage 1, it's right when USDOT, solicits and creates the grant itself, and solicits the grant program, and it's out on the street, if you will. It's open for eligible entities, and in each of these grant programs, eligible entities differ, and it's really important to see the eligibility first and foremost. And then you have the window. That window closes, and obviously the proposals are submitted. The awards at stage 2 are made, and that's when the municipalities actually know that they're going to get the funding. Well, obviously, we know the municipalities, states, and cities cannot do this on their own, so they will be then creating RFPs that will be seeking private sector bids to implement these projects. Before we even get started on stage 1, I'd like to go through a few pre-stage 1 grant programs, because just the sheer size of the Infrastructure Act is so massive that these programs are going to be rolling out in a sequential basis. And first and foremost, I want to start with electric vehicle charging. There is both a formula base, which means, for those who don't know, it's an apportionment according to size, miles, and different metrics of each state, because not each state is created equal in terms of its transportation needs. And that is the NEVI for short, National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Formula Program. It's $5 billion, and the state plans for that are due in August. So that is now moving, whereas the discretionary grant, the competitive grant portion of this, the charging and fueling infrastructure, which is $2.5 billion, that should be released in spring 2023. You'll see a trend here with the stage 1 grants. They're going to be coming in waves, and we anticipate obviously a lot to be coming out in the beginning of the year. And that's why it's so important for eligible entities, again, states, municipalities, NPOs, cities, to really think about what projects are most important to them, what are their biggest needs, and really form those groupings of private sector partners, such as that we have on the call and others, to really bring a holistic solution to it, because this is, at the end of the day, going to be a beauty contest across the entire country, to be able to win these awards on a competitive basis. And going to the next slide. And the bottom of each of these explains further how CVD data can help. And just going back to the electric infrastructure piece, the CVD piece, it's really key because they can actually identify where electric vehicles are on the road. It's down to that granularity where you can actually identify, internal combustion vehicles versus electric vehicles. Where are they going? What are the demands there? What are the current trends? And match that with equity, considerations for underserved communities, to make sure that they also have a chance to build out for the future. But the key is to understand where the trends are, and that's where CVD really can play a key role, providing insights that frankly no one else has, both not only on a passenger side where the predominance of CVD is, but also in the growing freight side where it's coming, and the need to place the right infrastructure at the right time and also build for the future. And moving on to the next slide, the congestion relief program also will be coming out in spring 2023. This is total funding of $250 million, and it's a competitive grant. And this is really talking about multimodal solutions to reduce congestion. So really being able to see where, and this is where CV data can really provide a key metric, not only historically, but real time, to be able to see exactly with significant accuracy the congestion choke points as they're happening in real time from an operations standpoint, but also from a planning standpoint, looking back, and be able to marry the two. And I think the panelists will talk a little bit later about the power of bringing together commercial and passenger vehicle to really see the congestion points at all hours of the day. This is, running 24/7. You don't need rumble strips, et cetera. That's why I get so excited about connected vehicle data, because you can see it all the time. It's always running, and there's no expanse or limitations to it. Moving to the next grant program, this is the Promoting Resilient Operations for Transformative, Efficient, and Cost-Saving Transportation. The best acronym ever. They had to get to the PROTECT acronym, and they did it, and it was successful. I got to say, this is a mixture of both, which is similar to the electric vehicle infrastructure funding. This is a mixture of both formula and grant funding for a total of $8.7 billion. And the competitive portion of that is slated to come out again in spring 2023. And this is really just like in terms of the congestion, but also looking at real time. I think Carl will talk about this later, the ability for CV data to be able to understand and really plan for resiliency in terms of evacuation routes, but also rerouting, but also understanding key areas that are underserved in the communities, et cetera, for any sort of community resilience. Moving to the next slide. So this moves us into stage 1. And this is where the grant period, application period is open. And I just want to highlight a few, in particular, the SMART grant, which is Strengthening Mobility and Revolutionizing Transport grant. This is open exactly from a month to now till November 18th. It's a total of $250 million. It's available to states, political subdivisions, which is cities, et cetera, and then MPOs and basically any public entity. This is designed, though, and this is very interesting to see, design, and many of these are sort of following this trend of really encouraging consortia to apply, not just individual entities to apply, but really bring a public-private sector approach, bring in universities, et cetera. And in this, actually, private sector entities, it's encouraged to bring them in as private sector partners. And it's throughout the grant and especially through the evaluation criteria. And this is because simply private sector entities have this data that public sector entities don't have. And really bringing in, to understand, as you can see, we've highlighted a few areas where we firmly believe that I do, connected vehicle data can play a strong role. It's even called out here in the second priority, but you have coordinated automation, intelligent sensor-based infrastructure. These are the priorities within the grant for proposals to be submitted. Commerce, delivery, and logistics, which is obviously key for any, being able to see actual commerce, what types of commercial trucks are going and where they're going, and smart technology, traffic signals, among others. And then moving on to stage 2. So these are grant projects that are already awarded. So we now know, and the municipalities know exactly, what proposal was awarded and for what dollar amount. And this is when they are now excited, but now the real work begins. The real work begins to really understand, how are we going to implement these grants? And I just want to highlight 2 in particular that were just recently announced, the Infra and RAISE grants. And these are competitive grants, first Infra, for multimodal freight and highway projects of national and regional significance. This was a total and is a total of $7.25 billion over 4 years. And there's a list of awardees that you can find available online. The same thing for the RAISE program. This is really more focused on urban and rural communities, helping modernize roads, bridges, transit, rail, and ports. Even at this stage, this is where CV data is really important, because really being able to, you've designed your project, but now you have to implement it. You have to diagnose it. You have to look at the pre, during, and post parameters to even understand and be able to monitor and determine return on investment, but also make sure that it is done right and it's done at the right time. And this is where connected vehicle data can really help, not only just really identifying and diagnosing those, whether it's dangerous driving conditions, trends, et cetera, to really set the table, but then monitor and validate those in post-implementation. And moving to stage 3, these are RFP, these are getting to the stage, and we haven't seen these yet because obviously the act is so new, but we're moving towards that, the stage where municipalities, cities and states are now developing RFPs in furtherance and execution of these grant programs. And just want to highlight one, which is a formula grant program. It's significant because this is $6.42 billion over 4 years. This is the carbon reduction program. And this is what it says, really trying to support congestion pricing, shifting transportation demand to non-peak hours, or otherwise reducing demand on roads. And yet again, this is where connected vehicle data, which is running 24 hours a day, is not dependent upon humans on the road or any specific segments, can actually see the entire picture, can see a 24-hour snapshot, rolling snapshot, but also historical of the problem and how to fix it, and really to help states implement these down to municipality level to really provide return on investment for carbon reduction strategies. So that sums up the overall grant picture. And I'm going to turn it over to Carl and JP to provide more finer points on really how CV data can help in all of these grant programs and beyond.
Thanks, George. I appreciate it. So really just want to highlight here some of the power of the combined CV data. So there's been some impact into some of the analysis that we've looked at on the value of both the consumer and commercial data sets being leveraged to get a really good picture of the total representation of the road networks in any particular geography. So on the image there to the left, what you're seeing is an average speed histogram. Now, in yellow, what you can see is the geotab data, and in blue, you see the Wejo data. So what you can see here is that there's differences. There's notable differences between each of these data sets. Now, combining the data sets, and again, from the world's largest consumer vehicle data set and the world's largest connected vehicle or commercial vehicle data set, you can see that this is further validating the need to observe both samples to get a really good representation of all of the traffic that's moving through these road networks. And that's extremely powerful. You can see that the yellow there trends a little bit slower speeds than some of the data in blue. Moving to the second image there, what you're looking at here is a heat map or a coverage map of all of the data in gray being provided individually by either Wejo or Geotab alone. Now, what you see in yellow is the addition of new road segments when our data sets are combined. So again, further validating the value of having both sample data sets together to provide a more comprehensive view of both data sets in any given jurisdiction and geography. So that's really impactful and something we really wanted to highlight here.
Thank you, JP. I think that leads on really nicely to actually, rather than us just tell you, we wanted to highlight a paper that was published by Purdue University, who have looked at the penetration rate of passenger connected vehicle data that was sitting at around 4.3%, but actually the benefit of adding in connected truck data or freight data increased that penetration rate. So the key here is really utilizing two data sets to get a real clear understanding of what is going on those roadways. One of the things that we see is the utilization of vehicles during daytime hours. As you can imagine, passenger vehicles are out day in, day out during those daylight hours, and where truck data and freight data really fills the gap is in those nighttime hours as well. So what I wanted to do is highlight some of the additional use cases here. And bear in mind the grants, or the three pillars of the grants: resiliency, congestion, and safety, how connected vehicle data can really support your bid application process. So if you think around safety and congestion, obviously, if you understand what is going on your roadways, utilizing the connected vehicle data, you can get ahead of incident avoidance. And part of that is understanding where those incidents have happened and what the driver behavior was surrounding that. So using that example on screen here, if on that section of freeway, if there was an accident, what did vehicles do? What was the driver behavior of those vehicles? Were they using route diversions or not? How did that impact the roadways? If you can understand that, then you can plan for it better. And I think that's one of the keys of understanding your roadways, using the connected vehicle data from a historic standpoint, also in that near real-time element as well, utilizing our data. Dropping down to the next one around weather conditions, again, around safety and indeed congestion. If you understand what is the impact of weather on your roadways, so for example, if you are seeing a correlation between slow driving and hard acceleration data that you get within the Wejo data set, how that's been correlated by Purdue University with 147 hard brakes equal an accident on a section of road. If then you add in, well, actually, we're seeing lots of windscreen wiper state change in speeds, hard braking on a section of road, but it only happens when the weather condition changes, and you're seeing that in the data set. Does that suggest that perhaps drainage is an issue on that section of road? And again, work zone safety. Work zone safety is a great example. We are leaning on the folks at Indiana DOT who are utilizing connected vehicle data today to consistently analyze their work zones to make them safer and better by utilizing, again, hard brake data to understand, is there an issue entering into a work zone whilst driving through a work zone and exiting a work zone. So onto the next slide is a great example actually in Florida of hard brakes and hard acceleration data. As I mentioned, there is a direct correlation between hard brakes and accidents. 147 hard brakes in one location equal an accident. So imagine and think around the safety part of the grant element and vision zero and those type of things. Instead of waiting for an accident to happen and then doing something, making a change and then waiting up to 5 years to see if that change has been effective or not, by utilizing hard brake data and hard acceleration data, i.e. yesterday's information today, you have a real clear understanding of what is going on in your roadways, where you need to focus your projects. If traditionally you've used that crash data, now you can use this extra layer of connected vehicle data to really prioritize projects and also understand what the impact has been by doing said projects. An example of that is if you see 4 intersections, 3 have a high number of crashes, but they all equal the same. If then you look at the next layer of hard brake information, and actually you can then see this is the project we need to move ahead with. Let's run that forward and say the project has started using this example on a main bridge. Let's say that the on-ramp to the bridge you've now looked at and you've reduced the speed limit of that because you've used the data to achieve the project selection. What you can also do is, as the project is going on, understand the impact and what is going on the roadways around, utilizing the connected vehicle data. But once the project has been completed, let's use the example of reducing the speed limits, you could actually see, have we made an actual impact, or are we still seeing the same number of hard brakes? And this really is the power of the connected vehicle data. On to the next slide, you'll see a great example of essentially our real-time traffic intelligence data. So this data set is provided via an API, and as I mentioned, is real-time information that essentially is providing insights into travel time, so the time taken to traverse the section of road under current traffic flow conditions, tying this back to the grant element around congestion, safety, free flow speed, average speed, if there is an immediate impact on that section of road, giving you that insight to make change and to plan for it. So thinking around traffic incidents, if there is an incident, as you can see here highlighted in red, it's telling you there is high congestion on those roadways, allowing you to make instant change. And again, plan in the future using data. So the next example is an example that we wanted to put up where connected vehicle data was used to understand the impact of a hurricane. Obviously thinking about what's happened in Florida recently, it is not safe to put people out there and understand how vehicles are being driven, what's going on, are they utilizing evacuation routes, yes or no. By using the power of connected vehicle data, both passenger vehicles and freight vehicles, you can see as the storms are approaching the coastline and the road infrastructure, where are vehicles going? Are they heeding the evacuation warnings? Are they utilizing the evacuation routes? Or are they, for example, utilizing hardened infrastructure like libraries or schools in the Florida district? You can then see as this weather event rolls across, what are vehicles doing? Are they bunkering down? Are they staying in one place? Are they moving out of the area? This really leans back into resilience and safety, going back to the smart grants and those 3 pillars, understanding what is going on those roadways to make informed decisions and plan for the future for when these weather events do come through again. So that leads us on to our question and answer section. I believe there are a couple of questions that have come into the chat. So one question is, what is the accuracy of the data? So JP, if I ask for yourself with regards to the freight data.
Yeah, absolutely. So Geotab just recently did a lot of data science work around, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. We did a lot of work centered around leveraging the FHWA counting station data to understand penetration and also correlations between the data sets. In that respect, we've seen a lot of value in the correlation of the data set from the accuracy of how our data is representative of a total population. It's been really, really positive. I can share our white papers for expansion factors that might give you better insights into the calculations utilized, and then maybe specifically an area of interest for the folks that would like. Please reach out to Carl, and I can work with Carl to get that out to you.
And from the Wejo, sorry, George.
Well, I just would add that the Purdue paper that you mentioned, Carl, actually does note that both sets are acceptable, statistically significant in and of themselves, and they've been correlated against static sensors to prove that. So Purdue's done a lot of research on this to be able to prove that against other sensors that are on the ground.
Absolutely, and just to add a little bit of context to that as well, with the Wejo data, because it's direct from the vehicle head unit and no third-party devices, essentially the data is down to 6 decimal places. So what that essentially means is a granularity of a 3-meter circle. So you can absolutely understand lane level usage, parking bay usage, for example. And following on from JP's point there and George's point, we have Purdue University, who've actually looked at our data and have published a number of papers utilizing and understanding the penetration. So when we talk about penetration, we're sitting anywhere from sort of 3 to 7% penetration. But the important bit is to mention that it is absolutely statistically relevant. Another question that's come in here is, obviously the data you mentioned comes from vehicles. Any effort to add pedestrian, bicycle, transit trips to this data set? Multimodal data would be even more useful for a lot of the BIL requirements. So from a Wejo standpoint, absolutely, we do look at other data sets on a regular basis. One of the things that we provide right now is passenger vehicle data. However, we are consistently looking at other data sets. The challenge that we have is making sure that the data adheres to the quality of the data sets both us and Geotab provide, and also indeed the granularity, and making sure it's consented data as well is an important factor there. JP, would you agree with that answer?
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. We've got a question as well. How does Geotab get this data sample?
That's a great question. So Geotab at its core is a telematics company and fleet management company. We've developed a proprietary device and have deployed that telematics device and software across all sizes of companies, whether it's an enterprise company ranging from trucking to owner operators to food and beverage, all sorts of different sizes and industries. And so we consume that, we collect that data from specifically those from that data lake of the data that we consume from our own device. And so just to kind of backtrack on that, that's 3 million connected commercial vehicles today. And when you break that down, about 1/3 of it is freight, but there is 2/3 that is additional things such as rideshare mobility companies, sales fleets, box vans, white van, delivery vehicles, things of that nature. So it's a pretty diverse sample of commercial vehicles, not just centered around freight specifically.
Fantastic. On to the next question. So a question from Kevin Riley. Is there an agency that is using the vehicle occupancy data to assist in their analysis of how HOV or other managed lanes are operating? So from a Wejo standpoint, we do work with tolling providers who are utilizing connected vehicle data to help them operate their managed lanes by understanding the vehicle flows of the non-managed lanes, as it were. So by understanding what is going on, and one of the great things about the Wejo connected vehicle data is we can actually provide insights back to end users in about a 36-second delay. So near real time understanding of what is going on that roadway infrastructure to help them impact their pricing and tolling. With regards to vehicle occupancy, I don't believe that exact metric is being utilized right now, but it's definitely an interesting one. It's one we would like to be talking to them about.
And that's what's so exciting about, again, CV data. You can't get this otherwise. You frankly can't get it. You know, mobile-based data, you just can't get it. A mobile-based data is only, it's not as accurate, and it's not showing the actual metrics that are coming from the vehicle itself. So something like that, Kevin, that's an excellent question about vehicle occupancy. That's something that certainly Wejo provides, and I think is going to be coming out with the backseat occupancy as well in the near future. So that's something that certainly could be used for HOV considerations and many others.
On to the next question from Jerry Weiner. What state cities currently have the highest resolution, space/time CVD coverage? JP, what's your experience in this?
So, I mean, our sample ranges across all of North America with higher coverages in more densely populated areas, just based on all the commercial vehicle traffic that's probably occurring in those areas. That said, we do have a wide coverage, and typically for folks interested in a specific state, we can always give you that particular breakdown of the total vehicles that are covered in that state, or even in a county, and break that down by light duty, the gross vehicle weights, all the industries represented in that data set, the total miles traveled, et cetera. And an important distinction here in the commercial vehicle data set is that you have to keep in mind that these vehicles drive all day long. That's really the intention of what commercial vehicles are really doing. So there's a lot of data consumed from these vehicles that's able to surface in these data sets. So I wanted to put that out there and highlight that as well.
And just from a Wejo standpoint, what we've seen when we've looked into the penetration rate based sort of state to state, as it were, is our three states with the highest penetration rate are actually, in no particular order, Texas, Florida, and actually California as well. However, we do have a really good representation in all of the US states. On to the next question by Eric Howell. Can Wejo provide historical ADT data? So as a default, what we provide is connected vehicle data from our data set of 13 million plus vehicles. We don't provide ADT data. However, the side note here is the data that we can provide goes right back to October of 2019 and everything in between. So using that example of the hurricane that came across in Florida, we can actually provide information on any kind of weather event from October 2019 and between, and even into some elements of understanding what was going on during COVID. JP, can you provide some insight as well to the oldest data that you can provide?
Sorry, can you repeat that, Carl?
Could you provide some insight into how far back your data set goes?
Yeah, perfect. So we do have some disparate months of 2019 and October 2020 and newer available. And that's just really based on the requests that have come in up to date on the type of data we should be running through our privacy pipelines and surfacing the aggregated version. But of course, our data dates back to the day we started consuming data from our telematics device. And then, Carl, one more thing to add on the coverage. It's as a rule of thumb, our data is representative of anywhere between 10 to 15% of all of the commercially registered vehicles in any particular geography. So in the U.S. And so we've done some work to look at our coverage and build out those expansion factors, like I said, and we've seen that that's really the range. So you can think about it from a safe standpoint. About 1 in 10 commercially registered vehicles have a Geotab device in it.
Fantastic. On to the second part of this question. When we prepare grant applications, can Wejo assist with language that would lead to the use of your services? And then help at no cost? I think the overriding answer is absolutely. We would love to engage with you at the conceptualization of these projects, of looking at grants and trying to understand how the data can work. Our goal as a business is to get the data into the hands of folks who can use it to improve the roadways. So absolutely. And what we do is we'll share our contact details at the end of this session. but this is sort of an open offer. As you are looking at this, as you are considering it, we would love to have your questions and set up a call to understand what your goal is and how we can support you moving forward. And essentially, you can utilize us as a conduit to Geotab as well. Let me jump into... Does Wejo expand its sample to be representative of all vehicles? So a great question. Now, as a default in our source data, so that is our movement and our event data, what we provide is what we see. So we do not extrapolate the data in any way. Essentially, we want to provide you that sort of ground truth of what we see. Bear in mind, this is coming from 13 million plus vehicles across the United States. However, we do provide some derived data sets where we do look at more what the flow of the data is, and we can work with you to look at vehicle extrapolation and data extrapolation. And just from Geotab's standpoint as well, I think I know the answer, but for the group.
Yep, I would reiterate the same thing that you just said, Carl. We provide the sample of our observed vehicles, but we do offer, like I mentioned, the expansion factors based on the FHWA counting stations that can allow you to, leverage those expansions depending on the geography that you're looking at to leverage those multipliers to leverage as a proxy for total population. And Carl, just actually one thing I wanted to add. There was a question around the granularity of the information available on the vehicles. And from the Geotab core telematics business, it's important to note that we've engineered this device with a lot of really intelligent algorithms to consume the highest amount of vehicle data, accelerometer data, and GPS data, and then deliver that via the cloud in the most efficient way using what we call our curve algorithm. And that's a patented algorithm that allows us essentially to deliver data not so much on a ping rate, but on a second-by-second basis. And on that side, we have all sorts of customers ranging from public sector as well that are, we have many of our public sector customers that have built war rooms to specifically view these vehicles on a big screen as they're moving in real time through the map. And that's extremely impactful and powerful to know where your fleet is actually driving, at what speeds, and where they're headed. So there's been a lot of value there. And so from a granularity perspective, it's important to note that we have really high quality data that we're able to work with to surface the aggregated insights.
And I think that's important from both standpoints. And it sort of ties back to one of the questions that we were asked earlier on. One of the key goals for Wejo and Geotab is to provide that high quality granular data. So we go through a very strict vetting process. So what you will not see is additional data sets sort of poured on just to add. It's really our core business to make sure the data that we provide is the right data, it's consented data, it's anonymized data, and that it provides the right level of insights. On to one of the next questions, which is, are you able to consume and or produce data in GTFS? So GTFS, I believe, is General Transit Feed Specification. And hopefully that's the right acronym that I've picked up there. The answer is, I believe that potentially would be doable from a Wejo standpoint. One of the things that we do is we provide our data out in GeoJSON formats that are compatible with many applications, for example, Esri and things along those lines. I think it would definitely be a question that we'd probably look to do a bit of a deeper dive on to understand what it is you're wanting to do with the data. So then we can kind of explore that with you. JP, is that the same for yourselves?
Yeah, I would say that maybe some further exploration around based on how we deliver data if it's something that's achievable. Yep.
Fantastic. And then I think we've got time for a couple more. So what vendor roadway network model map that includes lane level indications are you using to use in conjunction with lane level data collected you mentioned? So from the Wejo standpoint, essentially we provide data in two formats. In our source data, we provide it with lat long, so we don't do any road mapping with the data whatsoever. So that's our source data. With our derived data sets, we can provide that out the door utilizing the OSM roadmaps, OpenStreetMap roadmaps. Get my teeth in, apologize. And I believe that's the same for yourself, JP.
Yeah, correct.
Fantastic. Did you engage with any micro mobility companies? So from a Wejo standpoint, we absolutely engage with multiple data vendors on a regular basis, and it's something that we are constantly reviewing. I know that we do have scooter data in the building, and it is something that we are looking at. So we're constantly looking. So if it's something that you're aware of data sets, do let us know. Do you come and speak to both us and Geotab? OSM does not have lane level indications. So one of the benefits within the Wejo data that we have is because we have heading, we can actually derive which direction they're going on that OSM road segment. And I believe that's the same with Geotab off the top of my head.
Yeah, Carl, I think, and just to clarify there, so if you're looking at specifically lanes, there is a lot of, challenges when you're looking at GPS data that I think we try to address at the, with some algorithms like our snap to road algorithm, in areas like cities where you may see some GPS refractor from buildings and things of that nature. So we do a really good job at mapping our data to the highest quality at the OSM road edge ID level, like Carl mentioned. Now, I did see from some of those questions, like specifically analyzing one lane in a highway, that is not something that we offer from a Geotab perspective.
Fantastic. So I think that is us slightly over time, but apologies. I think it's been a really useful session for everybody. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank my fellow speakers, JP at Geotab, and indeed George Tagg at Congaree River Group. If you do have any questions, please do contact us directly or go via our website, which is www.wejo.com, or indeed the Geotab website as well. Any final comments from yourself, JP or George?
Just thanks everybody for your time. And from the Geotab side, if you're looking at our website, it's Geotab ITS. The Geotab Inc. website will lead you to our telematics. Thank you.
Yeah, and just thank you for attending. If you have any follow-ups, let us know. We're here to help.
Thanks, everybody.